Okay. Anyway, so today we have Steve Peterson live in person at the Agency 365, and he's a home inspector for anyone who doesn't know him. And he's, you know, smart and funny, not charming, just normal. But no, he really is very thorough. I have lots of clients that I send to him with confidence. I never worry. He's like the perfect balance between completely honest and also like real, like with people. So he will kill a deal only if it's a terrible house. And I feel like there's been very few deals that, I mean, he is.
No deals.
Oh, zero kill rate. No, I think one in the history of all of the time working together, and it really was a bad house and I would have never wanted to sell that house, but every other house, like he comes up with like tactical and practical ways to fix things and address things, and he's never scaring people, and I love that about him. He's very knowledgeable and has just a really good skill set overall. So today he's talking about all things structure and foundation. This is something, you know, I mean, we live in Michigan, we're surrounded by water, so there's, you know, a lot of foundation issues that are typical around here, and so he's going to talk to us about that and answer any questions you might have. So
All right, I'm gonna move you guys just a little bit again. Don't, there we go. All right, and so I just go to the PowerPoint.
You're gonna share first on Zoom.
Nope. I'll go back to Zoom.
Go back to Zoom, share screen, maximize the right side.
Yeah.
Maximize the, just click on the video part, click on it.
Yeah.
The actual video, yeah.
Okay,
Share screen,
share screen. Right,
there you go.
does that work?
And then if you click the up on the right from beginning, it enlarges.
Is it shared right now?
Oh, did I? Hold on.
Wow.
So dumb.
Hit share, go down bottom right,
Okay.
share.
We got this.
SHARE. Now bring up the song.
Now bring up.
And
Now
you
bring up the song.
I've been saying you need to get started on time.
That's good. Yeah. Now can you start with that clicker? There you go.
Got it? Okay.
All right, you guys. Again, my name is Steve Peterson. I am the owner operator of Pillar to Post Downriver, or the Peterson team. I own all of Wayne County, but I can go to anywhere you guys are going, just to let you know. Today's presentation is going to be on structure, so that you guys have a good idea of what you're looking at when you're listing a home or when you're taking a client in to purchase a home, just so that you guys are educated. A little bit of introduction. These are two of my guys. This is Ron and Rob. Ron actually does have hair, but today he has a bald wig on because he wanted to be part of the team. So he wears the bald wig when we get into groups, so he's not alone. All right. All right, again, today's course goals, identify possible structural issues when you're in a home, to be able to identify those and the significance of those issues. Also to help serve your clients and to look good, smart. All right. Course outline, is this house leaning, recognizing settlement cracks versus shrinkage cracks, foundation failure, sagging, and cracks in plaster and drywall. All right. And like you guys, as we're going, if you guys have questions, just hit me, stop me, things of that nature. Why do you need to know these? Because you don't want to sell something that's going to fall apart, pretty much, right? You want to know what you're looking at. You want to know what options are available to you, and you want to serve your clients better. Houses have issues. You know, you go into Lincoln Park, Allen Park, even, you know, some of the Trenton houses, block foundations, they crack, they move, they leak, the efflorescence, mold, there's all kinds of things that go on with the foundation. Before we start, a structure's job is to do nothing. Your structure should do nothing. It shouldn't move. We expect it to stay totally still. That doesn't happen, but that's what the structure of your home should do. Absolutely nothing. Structural problems stem from footings that move and components that fail under pressure. How's it going? What is a footing? You guys, a footing is what your entire house is built on. Say you have an 8-inch concrete wall, there's usually a 10 to 14-inch footing underneath that. And what that does is it goes deep into the ground and then it creates what's like a 90-degree angle or 2 45-degree angles off of each side. So the wider the footing, the more it produces or more that it shoots out and uses more ground underneath it. So the wider the footing, the more you can put on top of it, because at a 45-degree angle on every side, it presses down on the soil. Now, if you've ever been into a really old home that used to have a Michigan basement, and then they decide, hey, I want a bigger basement, they dig down in the center of the basement itself to give it more height, and they go past the footing, right? What that does when they go past the footing, it takes away that 45% on the interior soil. Right, so if it's not done correctly, some older homes with lowered basements are a structural issue. All right, so it has to be done right. In a lot of cases, you have to call in a structural engineer to make sure that they put the right type of support, or that house will start sliding into the center. All right, so whenever you walk into an older home and you walk into that older home and you see the basement wall, and then you see a step out and another wall, that's a lowered basement.
Oh.
So you can always notice an older home that's with it, that used to have a Michigan basement that was like for, you know, midgets or small people or whatever, you know, and now they have a real deep basement. Okay. Again, it spreads the weight out of a large area, and it actually goes out by a 45-degree area. All right, this is just a cross cut of a footing. You can see how wide it is here. It's also that wide on the exterior of the home. Okay, and then the block is built on top of it. When you guys go to a listing, which I know you guys all want more than buyers. So if you go to a listing, you want to always step to the other side of the street, no matter what. Go to the other side of the street before you take the listing, and I want you to look at the house. And I want you to step to the side. I want you to look at the two houses that are next to each other, and I want you to do the same on the other side. When you step back from the house, you get to see the whole picture, right? To see what's actually happening. You're looking for leaning, you're looking for sagging, you're looking for bowing, okay? It is common to see it. Just to let you know, you step back from these two homes. Oh, their chimneys are touching. Wow. The house is leaning. That's probably an issue. Could be an issue, could be a problem.
Right.
Easy to borrow.
It is real.
Easy to borrow gallon of milk from your neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I get some sugar?
Wow. That's crazy.
Right? So I just said, yeah. Now the one house has probably stopped settling because it's now leaning on the other house.
Right.
So maybe it's not an issue anymore, as long as you're friendly with your neighbors. All right?
Is that like a duplex or?
Now it is, yeah. And now when you look at this one doesn't seem to be as bad, but when you first looked at it, you thought which house was leaning? Right? But now when you look closer, it was this house that was leaning, but it looked like the other house was leaning. So when you look at this house, you look at the gap here and the gap there.
Oh.
So it was that, it looked like the bigger house that was leaning from the first picture, but it's the other house that's leaning.
That's interesting.
So you always want to take a step back, and you always want to look at the gaps between the house, so you can see what's happening with the house. This one is separating actually in the middle of the house. And yeah, we'll go over all that stuff too. So you just stepping back. This one looks like it might be coming a little bit forward, right?
Yeah.
What does the lean signify? The lean signifies a few possible problems. The footing has shifted and started to sink. The movement may still be ongoing. It's really hard, home inspectors, somebody pays us $300 to $500 and then sues us for 30 to 40,000 later on if we get things wrong. So we try to, look at this stuff and be spot on. But we can't tell on a 2-hour visit if it moved today, yesterday, 100 years ago. We can't tell that. So a lot of times, we write in there, consult a structural engineer. You guys hate seeing that, but at some point we're on the hook for, at that point, we're on the hook for $100,000 if we get it wrong. So, if you do see that in a report, that's just a CYA, right? We're putting that in there to be like, listen, I don't know if it moved 100 years ago, which it probably did. It's probably not continuing to move, but actually the picture I showed you is an underground ravine that runs through Toronto. And that underground ravine started to eat away at the neighborhood, and the whole neighborhood started to tilt. So
then everybody has to get a repair done to cure that?
well, you just hope that your house doesn't fall in. It was a big issue, but you have to step back to see the leaks. There's no way for us to assess the significance visually. So that's why a lot of times we just recommend, I always, Amy said that I'm not super scary. And in most cases, I will write it to say, if movement continues, contact a structural engineer, because I don't know if movement's going to continue or not. All right. What are the implications? Stabilization can be very expensive. Even after the house is stabilized, it may be impossible or prohibitively expensive to straighten the house. So you might be able to stop the settlement, but you're not going to be able to push it back to where it's straight, right? Or at that point, and then you guys have to decide when you walk up to a listing like that, how long it's going to be on the market. What does it do when they look on there? Oh, Amy has a house that's been on the market for 2 years. So you might want to step back and be like, Amy would be like, maybe go with Jeff.
Yeah, I would. Like, obviously.
Jeff will say, yeah.
So that means.
What should be done if you want to take the listing anyways, get a structural engineer, foundation specialist to consult on the problem. Quantify the problem so you know what you're dealing with. And, what would you do?
Any house will sell at the right price.
Yeah,
So
would you buy it, get to know your neighbors first, have a meet and greet with the neighbor? Hey, I know your house is leaning on mine.
What's a friends?
All right, take another step back. What else might you see? Sagging roof lines. Now, all the bungalows, a lot of times you'll go into a neighborhood where it looks like all the bungalows have that sag in the middle. And it's usually on the ones that have the brick all the way up instead of not all the way up, because the brick wall on the exterior, even though it has technically no structural support or, no structural aspect to it, it's tied to that outside rafter or that outside truss. So that rarely ever expands and settles. So then you see the middle truss or the middle rafters have settled. So it looks like the two ends on the edge are high and then this roof kind of sags in the middle. And that's because the structure on the two ends is stronger because it never was allowed to sag out. All right, so you'll see roof sag. A lot of times in garages, you'll see roof sag in the garages as well. So you just want to look at that, make sure you know it's sagging, understand why it's sagging before you take the listing.
Do you have a picture of a house sagging in the middle?
No, I don't. I'm trying to think of an address. You can
No, we don't
drive
have
by.
No, right?
All right, bowing walls. This is something you can see when you step back. Sometimes bowing walls have a lot of some significance. Sometimes they don't. If somebody doesn't keep up on their tuck pointing on their house, the brick is actually held to the house by a steel, like a steel bracket. And if over time, sometimes those rust out, if you're allowing the water to pass through, if the tuck pointing's bad. And sometimes as they give, that brick wall will pop out a little bit.
Mm.
All right, so you'll see it on that. Also, you'll see when people go over existing with like vinyl, or the vinyl will buckle. They put the vinyl on too tight, the vinyl, when it heats and expands, it buckles out, you'll see that. And then of course, you'll see where somebody rolled their grill up to the house and melted the siding.
Oh, yeah.
You see that, you see all that. Leaning or damaged chimneys, we have a rule, it's a 3% rule, if it's, or 3-degree rule. If it's leaning 3 degrees, then we're gonna call it out. Also, have you guys ever walked into a older home attic and seen the chimney going like this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally
It's,
built and then goes back straight, you're like, right? So those leans we don't call out because that's a structural build, they lean them that way. But if you see a chimney that's leaning a little bit, you know, we're gonna call out chimneys. This one has more than just a lean issue. This one also has, you know, missing mortar. They repaired the bad portion. Two areas on your house that you can always tell your clients when you walk up to a house, 2 areas that always deteriorate faster than anywhere else are chimneys and porches. Chimneys and porches are not regulated by the temperature of the home, so they get real hot, they get real cold, mortar falls out, the bricks deteriorate. If you've ever been to Venice, all the structures in Venice are built out of brick. Brick is actually waterproof because once the brick absorbs enough water, it becomes waterproof, right? So that's why you say Venice, outside your house is a canal, inside your house is fine because they're 100% brick homes. But what happens in Michigan, not in Venice, is that brick absorbs so much water that as soon as that first freeze or that first frost comes, if it's allowed, if you have too much water in it, the front of that brick just pops right out. All right.
Is like fixing mortar like an expensive job usually?
Everything is expensive nowadays. Yeah. Like 100%. What used to cost $100 now costs $1,000, right? So yes, it is expensive, but it makes the house look great
Right.
once it's done. They can Dremel it out like this. I would have probably, this is a repair on the top of the chimney. Because the brick all spalled off and was damaged, so they repaired this. But when you look at a chimney, some chimneys don't have a chimney cap on them. The chimney cap should actually stick out 1.5 inches on all sides to protect the brick from absorbing water. So when you see a chimney without a chimney cap, it probably should have a chimney cap. If we see cracks in the top of the chimney, we always call those out. Because it allows water to pass through into the brick and eventually the mortar will deteriorate and the brick will deteriorate. Okay. So next one is going to be recognizing settlement cracks. Settlement cracks are very common. Settlement cracks are the result of a footing settlement or movement, which is always going to happen. You just dug a big hole in the ground. So obviously, if you're taking a picture, make sure my gut's not sticking out. Okay.
I got a great angle on you.
I'm like,
It's like flexing on their back.
so when I look this way, it's like I got a toilet bowl.
I'll get it for you.
Yeah. All right, everything settles. And everything is going to settle. When you go into a new construction area, they just dug a big hole in the ground, they put a basement. By the way, basements are a Midwest thing. We're the only people that thought it was smart enough to dig a hole in the ground and make it a living space. Everywhere else in the United States doesn't have basements, so smart by us. So that footing is going to settle. And like I was saying, in new construction, you go into a brand new subdivision, they build the house. You should wait 2 years before you put any landscaping in. Right? That doesn't happen. Everybody throws their landscaping in immediately because it's part of their new house building package. Within that first 2 years, the grade around your house is all settled towards the house. Everything is pouring towards the house now. Right? So all that nice landscaping you paid for now has to all be redone if you don't want your basement to leak. Okay. Often happens in the first year after construction, so you are going to get settlement, right? Some are more serious and then continue, and that's the ongoing movement of a structure, but all houses will settle within the first year, so some of those cracks happened. When I walk into a poured foundation, I'm on the outside of the house, I know it's a poured foundation, I assume before I even go in, there's going to be 4 cracks. There's gonna be 1 crack under the main beam on the right. There's gonna be 1 crack under the main beam on the left. There's gonna be 1 crack in the middle of the front wall. There's gonna be 1 crack in the middle of the back wall. Those are automatically gonna be there, right? Those could be settlement cracks on the edges, but in the middle, those are often shrinkage cracks. Define 2 distinct category settlement cracks in the foundation, but no evidence of bulk movement. This is the most common, and then settlement cracks, and then you see in the entire structure has moved. If you're in the foundation or if you're on the exterior and you see a lot of cracking on the exterior brick of a house, and then you go in and you see the crack in the basement, that's where it's more of a significant issue. A lot of times you'll just see the crack in the foundation and with no bulk movement. What do they look like? Cracks in the foundations that are wider at the top and the bottom, that's a settlement crack. Roughly vertical, slightly diagonal. Okay, so what it means is the foundation or the footing went like this, right? And then the crack opened up like this. Right? If it's just a straight crack and it's not wide at the bottom or at the bottom, that's a shrinkage crack. But if it's wider at the top versus the bottom, then it's a settlement crack.
Either one worse than the other?
If it's after a long period of time, then no. Right, I mean, but if it's bulk movement, then yes, like if you can see it in the basement. And then you can see it all the way up the house, then that's bad. Brick on the exterior.
Oh,
This
can you go back to that other one? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's a normal,
is a little bit wider at the top than the bottom. This one actually looks like a shrinkage crack, but if it's a little bit wider at the top than the bottom, then it's going to be a settlement crack. But what they're saying is if you see this in the interior and then you see this on the exterior, then you know that it's a little bit more bulk movement than
oh,
most of the cracks around here are just, the exterior brick is settling down, not a lot of bulk movement.
That's bad, right?
Yeah, it's not great.
I think that like
You see this a lot where, it comes down through the entire house. Again, this probably happened, well, this one's worse, okay? And the reason why it's worse is because it's been repaired. And now it's cracking again, all right? So if you have a crack that you've seen repairs on and now it's still cracking, now you know that it's continuing to move because it's been repaired and it's cracked. Now, when we get into the interior of the house, I'm going to tell people you have a crack here that's been repaired. You can see the repair. I always tell people within the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to repair this crack again. And then in 3 to 5 years, you're going to repair the crack again, right? Because it's one of those expansion cracks in the drywall where your house, Michigan, we have 80-degree temperature swings in one day.
right.
It could go from 40 degrees to 40 below, or 80 degrees to 40 degrees the next day, right? So we have these huge temperature swings, but your house is like it's built out of wood, so it expands and contracts with heat. So that's why you have all the plaster cracking and drywall cracks and separation in the corners and things, because you get that expansion. Also, when we kick it. Also, when we get into the drywall and the plaster, in drywall or new build houses, we get what we call truss lift, right? And when you're building it, if you don't have a floating ceiling on there or a ceiling that's not attached directly to your trusses, it will lift and move with the house, right? So when it's cold, your trusses contract, right? So when they contract, they lift up. And that's why you'll see in a house, second floor, your crown molding is all cracked or there's big gaps. You know, so whenever you put crown molding, you should only connect it to one aspect. Either connect it to the ceiling, so it moves up and down, or connect it to the wall, and then you'll see the gapping. So if you only connect it to the ceiling, it'll actually move and you won't get that, you know, the crack, right? And then I have one in my house. When it's cold, I see the crack. When it's hot, that truss expands and presses back down. So all summer long, I have no crack. All winter long, I have a crack. Right? You can just see the different cracking on this one. By the windows, you can see the window, one window is lower than the other. Everything's dropping down on one side. You can see this is all settled down here, and less up here, but it's starting to settle down. Probably, I'm assuming these windows do not open.
Right, because the pressure of it.
Right. So another thing you can do is if the windows haven't been replaced in their original, if you cannot open a window, or even a newer window, if it's still moving, if you cannot open a window, then that means your structure is pinching that window. Right, so if your structure pinches the window, it will not open. I'm assuming these windows do not open. The top ones might still, because they look open. Right, but once the windows get tight, that means your structure is settling so that windows won't open, they pinch the windows. So you can see the cracks here. Now, like when you see a window that looks like this is a newer window.
Wow.
So you see the entire structure has settled away, that now they put the window in. Somebody sold them the house and they're like, oh, we'll just make the window work. So, you know, you have a structural issue. Your footing on the exterior wall is settling away. All right. Small settlement cracks are not likely to be a problem. All right. A one-time event, it moved, it cracked, it's done, move on. You know, it's probably never move again. Our threshold is always a 1/4 inch. If you have a 1/4 inch crack, it's significant. If it's less than a 1/4 inch, it's not significant. If you have multiple cracks on the same wall that equal over a 1/4 inch, then it's significant. If all your cracks don't equal a 1/4 inch, then it's not significant. All right. We can't determine if it's ongoing. So that's how in my reports you'll always see if movement continues, then contact somebody. All right, shrinkage cracks. Shrinkage cracks are caused by a natural curing of the concrete. That's why, how's it going? That's why I said when I walk into a poured foundation, you have 4 cracks automatic, right? When you pour a 20-foot concrete wall, as it dries, that pressure of it drying and pulling together, it cracks in the middle because it's shrinking, it's drying out and it shrinks and you're gonna have a crack. The good thing I always tell people about shrinkage cracks and poured foundations are the best foundation that a person can purchase. They rarely ever leak. If they do leak, they leak at a crack or they leak at rod hole. Rod holes and cracks are very easy to fix. Okay, you can fix it the old-fashioned way, a rod hole, you can drill it out, you can go to Michael's, you can get unused wine corks, or you can drink a bottle of wine and then take the cork and you press it into the rod hole as far as you can, and you hydraulic cement over top of it. When water penetrates that, it hits the cork expands, you'll never have leaking there again.
Let's go on a field trip and do that.
Yeah.
Right.
With all kinds of wine.
Right.
Yes.
We have to.
They also have, I'm pretty sure it's a THX plug, which is very similar. It's got a 3/8 bit on it. You put it in, you drill it till it gets a little bit tight. And then you can hydraulic cement over that as well. It expands once water hits it and it's good to go.
So In my basement, when I got my house, they had a bunch of rod holes and you could see like little leakage and I had a company come in, like you said, they drilled it out.
Yeah.
And they plugged them and then used this like epoxy stuff to fill it.
Yeah.
And I have not, knock on wood, in 12 years had any other issues and they guarantee lifetime
Yeah,
coverage and rod holes, because they
yeah.
said it like never leaks.
Yeah, the THX plugs are great. I
Mhm,
mean,
they're
they're,
that rubbery, like.
yeah, they put them in there and drill them a little bit, tighten them
And
up.
then it sticks out, and then like I had a crack at the, where like the house has those beams, like the, you know, where the house style is in the upper basement, and it kind of has this like shape.
Yeah.
The, I don't know what it's called, but they had a crack there and they replaced that too, and they said the same thing as when it settles.
Yeah, and you're always gonna get that settlement or the shrinkage, and they're really easy to fix. I had a house, you know, you can see, like, when you go into a poured basement, you can see the rod holes will start to change color. So when you see a rod hole that looks a little yellow or it looks
That's what you
rusty,
usually see,
yeah, you see they're starting to change color. That means you have high hydrostatic pressure on the exterior. And you want to probably address those sooner than later. I've seen a basement that was under extreme hydrostatic pressure and the rod holes on one wall popped out. And the water was flowing in like you just turned the faucet of a hose on. It
Wow.
was just like, I was like, right? So that, and you know, of course, I'm gonna call back on that. Crazy. I'm like, I told you your rod holes showed leakage and to monitor and fix them as you needed. I'm like, I didn't expect that they were all gonna blow out at the same time. And I said, I also told you to change the grade in the backyard sooner than later because you had poor grade in the backyard that was pouring water and then you had hydrostatic pressure. I said, did you adjust the grade on your backyard when you moved in? No. I'm like, did you fix your rod holes? Like I told you to, no. I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do.
Report.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, page 2, page 4, like.
Did they do those plugs from the inside or the outside?
Inside. Yeah, so what happens is when a footing is poured, so you have this, they come in with you know, with these forms, right? And they stand these forms straight up and they separate them, right? And then they put the rods in and they put bolts on the rods. So when you pour the concrete, the footing cut, you know, the forms come out and hit those bolts. So they know it's always 6 to 8 inches wide, depending, right? When that cures and dries, they come out and they take the bolts off the outside rods, and then they hammer those rods through and take them out. So now you got a hole all the way through. And what they do is they throw some hydraulic cement on the outside, they throw some on the inside, but you still have that gap. And eventually water enters the outside with you, and when you have high hydrostatic pressure, so now you have water all through the middle of your foundation.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right, shrinkage cracks, what do they look like? Settlement cracks, wider at the top. It's much smaller though, hairline cracks, 1/8 inch or less. This is probably what you had at your house. A small crack. And these are really, like I said, these are really easy to fix. Shrinkage cracks they have no significance at all, no structural significance. They're just what happens when concrete shrinks. And this is why they get injected with the epoxy, right? So this is what you were talking about right here.
Yep, that's exactly my walls look like.
Yeah, okay, so.
And I'm like, is this gonna scare a buyer? But I did it just to protect the house, because I had 2 that leaked, but I did the whole lower level of my whole basement.
Yeah, so these should not scare a buyer.
Okay.
As long as you guys are saying this is professionally done.
Yeah.
And when a home inspector comes in, we're gonna be like, yep, professionally done.
Mhm.
How they do this is they come in, they epoxy these little tubes to every 6 inches or every 8 inches on a crack. They epoxy those to the crack itself, then they epoxy the entire crack, and then they leave for lunch. And then they come back when the epoxy is dried. And then they stick a machine on there and they high pressure epoxy shoots through the tube inside the crack, right? High pressure is so it fills the entire crack with epoxy. This epoxy, when it dries, is actually harder than the concrete. So it should never leak again.
Oh.
Okay. This is just the machine shooting it in there. You can also cut those off now. So the tubes that are sticking out, you can just take a little, like a hacksaw or a little saw or sawzall, and you can cut.
Even
them.
though they're plugged on the outside of it, like I feel like that nothing's gonna come out because it dried. Right? Like,
Yeah, you can just cut them off, because the epoxy actually went inside the crack. It's still full, but you can cut them
no,
off.
stick on it. I mean,
Yeah.
most of the basement's finished now. We just put drywall over all that.
Yeah, you can, but if you wanted to, but if it was an intrusion into the house, you can just saw them right off.
Okay. Interesting.
Because this one, they took them off eventually.
Yeah.
All right. Review, leaning house should be treated with caution. Don't take that listing. And don't let your buyer die. All right. Settlement cracks indicate structural movement. In most cases, it's a one-time event. Large settlement cracks, more than a 1/4 inch, we're gonna call in a structural engineer, and shrinkage cracks have no structural significance. All right. Foundation failure. Okay, this is probably the one, you guys know Drew Cheatwood? Yeah, you've seen his videos. All right, or seen him on General Hospital. So when we walk into a house, and I walked into one with him on the island, and I walked down in the basement, I looked at I literally looked at the foundation wall. I turned around, I looked at him, I looked at the foundation wall, I looked at him, and I'm like, you know, because I try to explain things in a way, all my guys are trained the same way. When we see something, we're gonna call it out. We're never gonna hide it. We're always gonna call it out, but then we're gonna come up with a way to fix it, right? And explain how it's done, just so that it doesn't scare the person to think that it can never be fixed. I'm not the guy that's gonna be like, oh my God, get out, right? On this one though, I was like, maybe we should inspect this house from the outside. Right? The wall, literally, it was like this, right? It had a crack on it like that, right? I could see inside the block. And I'm just like,
That's bad.
Yeah.
so when I write in the report, catastrophic foundation failure, I can't really explain that away.
You will die if you buy this house.
The back of the house is falling in, and then when that falls in, the top of the house is probably gonna fall in too, so,
When you're so.
so sleep in the front.
Like the floor.
It's like it's authority.
Please sleep in the front of the house. On the 17th, I'll be in Lisa's office, Lisa LaRoe, and I'm doing radon. That's another, those are easy fixes. Radon's an easy fix. But I went to a house in Monroe. He's like, yeah, my wife makes me smoke in the basement and sometimes sleep down here because I snore. I need to get the radon test. It came back 35. I'm like,
Holy
I'm
cow.
like, so you're smoking down here, sleeping down here, and the radon is 35. I said,
She's trying to kill you.
You're dead in a month.
yeah, I'm like, you have a shoot. All right. Horizontal cracking in basements. We're very good at explaining this. Most of the time, it's a very insignificant crack, but it's starting. Or it happened a while back and it's cracked. But when you see something like this and you have a bow in the wall, this is bad. I mean, this has to be braced. All right. There's a couple different ways we talk about this when we see it. If it does have significant bow to it, it should be braced with the I-beams. They make the 4-inch I-beams. They usually go back on the floor joist about 3 feet. If it's a good company that's doing it, that has a crank on it or a movable press in it. And what they do is they concrete it into the floor on the low side. So the steel beam, by the time it gets to the floor joist, it could be 2 to 3 inches away from the top of the structure or the top of the foundation. Then good, like I said, good companies, they then brace that back 3 to 4 floor joists and they crank that steel to where they can get it as close to the top of the foundation as possible. And then they come back in 3 months and they crank it again. All right. What that does, that steel does not like to be crooked or bent, so it'll press that wall to a certain extent, press it back in. So you might get less, it might fix the actual bow, depending on how pliable the earth outside is. Okay,
I'm sorry, how close to the wall does it have to be? The
on the
water?
wall,
Right on the wall.
yeah, at least on
So-
the base of the wall.
What?
On the top of the wall, it still could be gapped,
Okay,
because the top of the wall, it may not have ever been able to be bent back straight. So you might see a gap at the top, but the bottom has to be tight.
so what if you see a steel brace that's like 4 feet from the wall?
That's just an additional support for the structure above. Yeah, so that's not,
Okay.
they're not break, they might have had some floor sag, something of that above it,
Okay,
but if it's not on the foundation wall, then it's not doing it,
gotcha.
all right?
Yeah.
Also, like, if it's a small crack and you see no bowing, so we're still gonna call out a horizontal crack every time, right? But if it's a minute crack, it's not bowing, you don't see any previous repair, we're always gonna mention the carbon fiber strapping. Okay, carbon fiber strapping is very similar to the epoxy injections. They take carbon fiber, they hang it on the concrete wall itself, they epoxy into the carbon fiber. Once you epoxy carbon fiber, it becomes strong as steel. So once it's epoxied to that block wall, that block wall then cannot continue to move. And we only recommend those on very hairline cracks, that you're fine with the crack being the way it is, you just don't want it to ever move again. You can do the carbon fiber straps. If you want to press that wall back, then you have to call a company for the IVs. All right.
What are these? Is that where they're digging from the outside and pulling it out? You see that metal on the wall there? They're all over the wall.
Oh, yes.
Because I think the wall was
Yeah,
going
we don't-
there, so they
we don't-
dig on the outside and.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore. And they won't do it around here a lot because, yeah,
No, it's just a house that just showed reason.
a lot of times you don't have enough space to do this either. Yeah, you don't have enough space because they have to go pretty far out into the yard to get enough dirt to pull it back.
Yeah.
And then
So they only make that repair on the inside,
the,
like if a wall repair
Yes.
is always on the inside.
yeah, yes, but if it is two, like the one in Groseal I saw, that's,
Too far gone or.
that needs to be, everything needs to be dug up, the house has to be supported and the foundation has to be rebuilt. That's a $60,000 repair on a $200,000 house.
We're gonna pass. Thank you.
No, not buying it, right? So that one really needed. And you could tell there was so much water in the yard, like you have to get water away from your house. Water cannot be near your house. Gutters have to be done, grade has to be good. I always tell people, and if you've had an inspection with me, I always talk about hydrostatic pressure, and I always say hydrostatic pressure never loses. Doesn't lose. It wins every time. And I always tell people Grand Canyon did not create itself. Right?
I use that all the time. I heard that.
You heard it. The Grand Canyon cut through rock, stone, a mile deep.
And
It's like
water
blowing
lakes,
up.
the least resistance, I always tell my clients that, and our water table is high in Michigan, I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by water, so.
Yeah, my sub pump runs every 26 seconds. And it's right under my bedroom. I don't even hear it anymore. But what I do hear is when it doesn't run. I'm like,
Is everything okay?
what's happening? Why am I wide awake right now?
Well, why don't you hear it
1,
anymore?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Are you used to it? Is that why?
Yeah,
Because it's right under my bedroom too, and I hear that thing all the time.
Yeah.
Picture it like you're in
You just
tropical environment.
eventually,
Why did they put it under the bedroom though? That's
Exactly.
dumb. What-
Mine's underneath my.
yeah, it's soothing, yeah,
It's soothing.
yeah.
White noise.
Oh.
But I'll tell you what, when the power goes out and I don't hear it for a couple of seconds, I'm like,
Oh, shit, I'm grabbing the.
Yeah. yeah. And as a home inspector, one thing I do have at my house is I have a brand new sub pump all set up with the PVC on it and everything and the coupler. So on that 30th second, I can go down there and in 1 minute swap out one for the other. Just because I always have a new one sitting there.
Do you have the water?
I know I have the hydraulic system, the siphon system, just so that if I lose power, I always have water pressure. If you're ever putting one of those in, they make 3 different types of pumps. They make a 7-to-1, a 3-to-1, and a 2-to-1. Definitely pay extra and go to the 2-to-1 because that only uses 2 gallons of city water to remove 1 gallon of pit water. The 7-to-1 uses 7 gallons of city water to remove 1 gallon of pit water, and now your water bill is through the roof.
Really?
You might as well fill the pool.
Could that be why my water bill's so high?
Well, you should have a different sub pump down there. You shouldn't be using that. That's a backup.
Yeah.
You look at your neighbors first.
They don't have any sub pumps. Mine's a newer build in my block, but it has a sub pump.
Your neighbor might be stealing water from you, not filling it. That's how I fill my boat.
Until now, because it's on Facebook Live.
I'm like, Kent, when are you guys going out of town? Oh, you're gonna miss me filling the pool. He's always complaining about his water bill in May. All right. Let's see if I can.
These stalls.
The what? This, oh,
I'm just a favorite thing, if you want to keep going.
He has no idea what.
yeah.
That's right, wing it.
So, McDancer.
So what happens when you see a crack in the basement
Yep,
going down, but then it stops at the window and you don't know if it's going all the way up or not?
all the way up to the house.
Yeah, like it stops at that, you know, at the,
If it's wider at the top of the crack than the bottom, then you know it's the bottom of the crack.
okay,
Okay, or if there's, or cracks are bad if there's any shear. Okay, so say you have a crack, right? Say the crack looks like this, right?
Mhm.
And it looks like it fits together.
Yeah,
Then it's a shrinkage crack.
okay.
But if that crack looks like it should have fit together, but now it's like this, and it doesn't fit together,
that'll-
that's a setback, yeah.
But you said that some cracks, if they go all the way up, then that's a
That's your
bad thing.
trick,
So if
yeah.
it stops at a window, how do we know if it's a bad?
You would see it on the exterior.
This one's steady.
Oh, okay, okay.
And it
Little
always
hole
hurt,
in the
like,
middle.
so in
Yeah.
The basements, when you see like the horizontal, like that's shifting of a.
Horizontal cracks are always structural, and that the hydrostatic pressure is pressing in on the wall, and that's bowing your wall, so that's how we do that. So those have to be braced to stop the crack from moving any additional, or they have to be braced with the steel bars.
Okay.
So I always call out the horizontal cracks. I always tell people how to fix them so they can fix them. Again, with the home inspection, you never know when that crack occurred. That crack could have occurred 10 years ago, and then they've adjusted the grade on the house. The grade on the house is great. Everything's flowing away from the house. That hydrostatic pressure isn't there anymore. So that pressure may never move that long.
Is there a way that you would have someone like track something so that they could monitor like the difference, like if you drew like a line of
Yeah.
and Sharpie on the wall or something like?
Yeah,
something-
so I always, so you can pull a millimeter. Or you can print something off of Google, like a little measuring tape or a millimeter tape, and you just tape it to the wall and you mark it. And then next year or 2 months from now, if it's any bigger, then you know it's moving. And a lot of times, like I said, those are in your Lincoln Park houses. Is it, are we?
We're good. Should be.
No? Like, it's not up here again.
Don't mind us. There we go.
There we go. Okay. Re-supported or rebuilt, we talked about that a little bit. Going on, this is the floor sagging, okay? Older homes often have sagging floors. undulations in each room, they go up, they go down. That means your house has settled. Floor sag in the middle, if you go into a house, and I carry a really high-tech level with me, it's called a golf ball.
Yeah,
You just drop it on the floor and see where it goes.
I have the same thing in my bag.
Yeah, I mean, if it goes to the center of the room or where the middle structure is, then that's fine because the house is collapsing on itself. So it will only sag so far, right? If it's sagging into the middle, it only goes so far. It's all tight, everything's tight. It sags to the middle. It's an older home. You walk into a 100-year-old home, that's what's gonna happen.
Right.
That's just an old home, right? If you get to a house there, you drop it and now it's sliding to the outside wall, then your footings are on the exterior settled, which is also common because your interior footing, so when you pour footings, right, you have a footing that goes to the center of your house, you get the footing that goes all the way around the outside. Those footings in the center, or even if they were just spot footings, right, for the structural support, or the pillars inside the home that you see, they're not affected by weather. They're in the middle of your house, right? They're not affected by any rain or frost or anything like that. So once they're in the center, you're always going to get a little bit of settlement to the exterior walls because they're going to settle because of moisture and all the other stuff up there. So they're going to settle a little bit. Dramatic settlement means the house is tearing apart. Right? So if your outside walls have dropped considerably and your middle hasn't, it's just going like this. Right?
Right.
So you just want to look, I mean, if you see significant sag and then you get up and there's additional support in your attic, holding your attic together, then you have some really, but again, the same thing applies. I don't know when it moved. And it's more than likely an older home, right? But if you see new homes with this, then your foundation is set up or your footings have set up. Yeah, if it settles to the outside, your footings are, and it's falling apart. All right, cracks in plaster. Home buyers often zero in on cracks.
Yeah, they do.
Oh,
Oh my God.
They're like,
Everywhere crack.
it's crack. What's this? It's a crack, right? So, and that's why I always tell them, this is gonna crack. It's cracked now. It's been repaired. It's gonna crack again because of the expansion and contraction of your house. Most are typical settlement cracks. Most have zero significance. When you see a plaster crack, it doesn't matter. A lot of time it's just a common everyday occurrence. Cross lift in new homes, you're gonna see that all the time. When the caulking on the crown molding is separated, you're gonna see that most of the time in the winter months, just because you have truss lift. All right, hairline cracks don't mean anything. Obviously, if a crack is over a 1/4 inch, then yeah, that's this would probably be, if a crack runs diagonally across a wall from the top to the bottom, that's significant. Yeah, bigger cracks are significant. This is some type of settlement that's causing the crack. Diagonal cracks, straight up and down cracks mean nothing whatsoever. Diagonal cracks, questionable.
Okay.
Right. Diagonal cracks covering an entire wall, structural movement. I mean, something is moving or has moved. And if it's been repaired and it's done again, it's all right, very large cracks are structural as well. If it's a 1/4 inch wide, then that's an issue. All right.
So what if that,
Huge.
what if you see that in an upstairs bedroom that's diagonal?
Yeah, it's there's some type of movement. I mean, yeah. Often if you see that, you can use your golf ball and drop it on the floor and it'll usually go to an outside wall.
Okay, so you talked about diagonal and you talked about vertical. What about a horizontal crack in like a plaster?
Plaster, well, a lot of times, depending on if plaster walls, it's fine. I mean, it's no big deal. I mean, it just the
It's
expansion.
specifically at my home.
Yeah, it's,
And my garage was added after, and I think, I don't know, something changed. I don't know.
it could be a little bit of pressure on the wall that cracked it, from the garage. Or when if they tied into if they tied into the roof line and put extra pressure on the interior wall, it'd probably bone in a little bit. No, it's probably fine.
I can find you a house.
And just, you know, and some things, and just be aware, like, you know, we're visual inspectors, right? So we go in and visually inspect. We never inspect too early in the morning because the sunlight is, you can't look into it and then you miss stuff. And we never inspect too late at night, because ambient light is really important. Without ambient light, a lot of times I can't see what I'm supposed to see. So that's why you'll never get me out late. I'm not a flashlight inspector. I will never do that. All right, because if I miss something, then I'm on the hook for it.
So those two cracks in this picture are bad.
Crack is bad. Yeah, those are bad cracks.
Because
Okay,
they're diagonal.
because they're diagonal.
But horizontal and vertical are just normal structural or normal.
Normal cracking.
Okay.
Unless it's greater than a quarter inch.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Just taking notes. I love you.
There
Ashley.
you go. All right, you guys, any questions?
This is
Um,
great.
Yeah, for what I will need from you guys, if you want to put together a list for me, I'm gonna need name, email, and license number. So, and then I can give you guys credit for this class through CE Marketplace.
All right, awesome.
And I teach 25 different classes, so
Where,
if you ever need me
Is this
again. You guys, this is it. If you want to take a picture of this, this is my contact information. If you, it can be on your home screen, you can send it to your clients. If you do the home screen one, you can actually book an inspection right from your home screen. So if you do want our information, or you can text S Peterson to 88500, and that will also give you all my contact information. Questions?
name, email, and license number, is that what you said?
Yep, name, email, and license number, and then I can give credit. I have 3 classes to put in there since I've been slacking. Still gotta put in your other one from major mechanicals.
Anyone have any questions? Anything at all, anything?
I thought there was breakfast. What's the breakfast?
Amy. Also do it. She took it home last night.
I offered to pick it up.
I was dressed still this morning.
Yeah, why on Friday mornings? Thursdays are big bar night.
Well, we usually do mimosa Fridays. She also usually brings mimosa. Yeah, she does. Steve, thank you. Hey, let's all give Steve a round of applause. He did great.
Here, let me get my dongle.
Please do. Just real quick before we wrap up. Hey, just real quick before we wrap up, I'm gonna bring Rob up from MPIRE. He wants to talk about one quick new fancy program that MPIRE has that he wants to share with everyone, so. Roberto. All right. I think everyone will benefit from this if you really understand the program. It competes with your Mistas, your Chinoas, all your down payment assistance program. So
Yes, all right. Hey, everybody.
Oh, we're still sharing.
that's okay.
Sure. All right,
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Steve. No, we're not sharing. That's just the TV.
All right, so I'll be quick. I appreciate you guys' time. So this is our, we pay mortgage, all right? It's 96.5% finance with, we give you the 3.5% to make it 100% finance program, which is absolutely incredible and outrageous. So your client can get gift funds, whatever cash they have to bring for closing costs, taxes and insurance, but we're paying you that 3.5% down payment. So you're getting in 100% funding from us, 30-year fixed. That's the way the mortgage works. Maximum county loan limits, 472,000 is the max loan. So that means your max amount that we'll pay you is about 17,000, which is crazy huge. And here's the cool parts. There's no like real restrictions, except for a 620 middle credit score. All right. If you have a 620 middle score, you're a first time home buyer, you're in. If you have a 620 credit score and you make $300,000 and you just sold your house, you're okay, because not 300,000, I'm sorry, 100,000, 110,000, because you can't go over 140% of the AMI. Most of your AMIs, area median
What's the
income,
name?
right? Your area median income for Wayne County, Monroe, most of the communities around here, it's about 72,000. And most of your grants or your down payment assistance programs restrict you to 80% or sometimes 50%. So if you live in a house and your household income is greater than 50 or 60,000, you don't qualify for most down payment assistance. This one goes to 140%, meaning it's 140% of 72,000. That gives you $110,000 of income that you could make, and you still qualify for this. If you are a first responder, if you're an EMT, if you're in the volunteer, if you're a retired volunteer, if you happen to be a volunteer for the Salvation Army for 6 months, but now you are an auto mechanic, you qualify for this program. If you're just an average citizen, you qualify for this program. I mean,
There's
there's
a
so many
first-time
things.
home buyers only.
It's not first time home buyers only. So you can, if you're a first time home buyer right out the box, you automatically qualify. There's no layers, there's no overlays, there's no
Then the credit
restrictions.
score.
You just have to have the 620 credit score and you're good. That's huge. Does require desktop approval. So that means when we run it through Fannie Mae underwriting engine and it says approve, you're good to go. You could get gift funds. You can get seller contributions up to 6%. That's all allowable.
Is it for single residents only?
Single family, great question, and 2 units. Because 2 units is the new hotness right
Duplex
now, right?
also. Duplex
Right.
also.
When you write
Yes.
a contract, I don't know if I didn't catch it, what would you, like, you know, where you put like FHA or conventional or whatever, what would you
It's
put?
an FHA.
It's
It's
FHA,
FHA only.
so it's FHA 203B, which is your standard FHA program,
Okay.
which is outrageous. You can do single wides, you can do multi-wides, you can do warrantable condos. But I think one of the big items is, like Mike said, you can do 2 units, duplexes are
A lot
huge.
of people are
So this is
looking
the
to
primary residence, okay, primary residence. And it is just this wide open swatch of program that gives so much back.
So
And-
620 credit
Yeah.
score, primary residence.
Correct. So it'd be really hard for someone to fall out of not qualifying for this program.
I guess maybe I just get confused very easily, but 3.5% now based on your income of like, so like you said, something with a percentage of income or something, like that, like there's like a max, so the max,
It looks at the area around you. You have a medium income for the area you live in. Other ones are only like 40%, 50%, 60%. So if you make more than the majority of the people you live around, you don't qualify for a lot of DPAs. This one, you can make 140% of what the average income is in your immediate area.
That's huge.
140.
Right.
So you can be the top runner in your city and literally qualify for that.
okay,
Or you could be a first time home buyer and make $300,000 and it's irrelevant. Because if you're a first time home buyer, you get put over here. If you just sold your house, and that's what we're talking about, the area median income, and you make $95,000 a year, and you're the primary borrower, but your spouse makes 70,000. Now you're like 160. They're not borrowing because we don't need them. So they're just a non-occupying borrower or non-borrowing person, which is crazy.
So you
So
can
you
use
should-
just one person.
You can just use
That's
one
awesome.
person, even though the other person's in there, you don't have to see their income.
So like Mishta, a lot of people don't realize, Genoa's a huge one, Mishta, those all have to be paid back at some time. Genoa, if you do it, Genoa, a lot of people don't explain it to you, other lenders don't, you're literally opening up a second mortgage that you pay that you don't even realize, but you pay that back. Mishta, they might give you 12,000 or 15,000, if you sell that house in 5, 7, 10 years, you pay that back. This is 100% forgivable, they give you whatever that 3.5% is, you don't pay it back. You do not pay $1 back.
Well, and it's different because Michelle used to have to, they would prorate it for how long, and if you were
Right.
there like 7 years, it's
Tapers down.
forgivable,
Right,
you
right.
know, owe less and less, but now you have to pay 100% of it at
Right.
closing.
So if you move in, you live there for a year, and then all of a sudden you decide to rent out the second unit, then you decide to bounce. Buy something else, and now you got an investment property.
information on this so that we can all share?
It's on your story.
Yeah, I put the basic post, we can give you more info, but we have some promo stuff that we're starting to circulate to social media, so.
Well, and the other thing is with Mishta too, your other, whoever is in your home, not only does their income count, which could like finance you out or you make too much money,
Yeah.
but they also have to have a credit score that's
Right.
acceptable.
So,
Right.
just like Michigan, where it's like, hey, you can only buy a house up to two
Correct.
thirty-five.
There's also
Does this
kids on there.
this one have something like that, or?
472.
472?
$472.
What's the closing term on this?
Standard 15, 12.
What's the only thing they have to do, the
Oh, they gotta do it.
certification, they have to do a quick certification, like, just like any other.
Yeah, for
I
all
don't like this, I think it's, what's the certification, what do you have to get?
it can be from anything that is HUD approved. So like usually all my first time home buyers, after I take a look at their credit, regardless of the situation, I send them a link for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's first time home buyer tutorial. They go through it, they print out the certificate. Once they put my email in there, their loan officer, it automatically comes through. It takes them an hour, maybe two to do it. And then they've got their certificate and they're good to go.
That's
It's
it.
the only thing.
Because Michigan has that whole extra step where it has to get underwritten and then it has to go get approved by Michigan, that takes up to a week sometimes. None of that takes place.
So how much money do they, will they still need to have in the bank?
So it's not necessarily like how much, it's just a matter of the reserve requirement and then what you plan on bringing to the closing table. So for example, if we're talking about a $200,000 home in this scenario, right? Depending on what the taxes are, obviously we gotta collect the taxes up front and the homeowner's insurance.
So you're just paying closing.
So
costs,
maybe
no
$5,000
down
to $6,000 total out of your
You're not
pocket.
putting anything down.
Right there.
What's the
Right.
amount of the down payment?
It is 3.5%
Of
is what we pay you, yeah. So you're borrowing only 6.5.
HA, right?
payment. 72, it's up to like 17,000. If you buy it.
Yeah, on normal FHA, you have to bring 3.5%.
Right.
Now you're not paying it, so now it's just taxes, titles, insurance, that, so now you.
Like, cause it don't
3.5
like
times
HA,
two,
right?
6, 7,000,
Yeah.
$2,000 less.
Yeah.
Bring it.
Yeah,
If you divide it up, you have down payment and closing costs, it's two things.
Yeah.
We cover the down payment,
Exactly,
you just cover the closing costs.
exactly,
Wow.
that's a lot, that's a big chunk of time,
Yeah, it's a game changer.
yeah.
Forgivable, 100% forgivable, they don't pay it back. This program is ridiculous.
That's a good,
That's
that's,
why I tell it to, it's like. You know.
Siri likes it. Oh my, it's a program.
It's a great program.
Great program. Everyone should be wowed by this program.
obviously.
Yes.
FHA, right?
Right.
Yes, yes. I mean, we do have a conventional one out there that's, you'll hear about that one pretty soon as well. But this is definitely, it's a game changer. Yeah, 100%.
So, Robert, we'll get that sent around to everybody if anyone wants to, look into it, utilize it, share with your clients.
Well, if you want to share it to get more clients, because everyone I'm sending it to, there's interest.
So essentially 3.5, could the buyer even, you potentially get more on their pre-approval, because now they don't have to bring 3.5?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, because that now offsets what you have to bring to the table.
The house appraised for 5 to 10 grand or more, and now you raise it up a little bit, so you just sell it just a little more. And then you get some contributions back, so there's so much left.
So we'll send more stuff around that. If anyone has any questions, reach out to Rob. He can explain it, but they just came out last week and we're getting a lot of interest on that. So that's why I wanted to make sure we shared it. All right, with that, everyone have a great day. We'll chat soon.